Okay, continuing on with chapter 4, section 1 notes. We're going to be looking at what other amendments are guaranteed under the Bill of Rights. First of all, be super smart to count cards. We have the Second Amendment. The Second Amendment is the right to bear arms. Um, why is this so important? You know, again, we have to go back to colonial days. And when people think of the right to bear arms today, what they think of is, well, we need guns for self-defense because there's so many crazies and wackos out there that if someone breaks into my house, I've got to be able to protect myself. That is somewhat true when it comes to why the colonists felt it was right to be able to own and keep your own arms. But there's still a very big difference. You have to remember when the United States became the United States, we did not have a full-time military. And so we had to rely on, you know, ev ordinary everyday citizens to gather together with the guns that they had and be a somewhat organized militia. And they would go out and defend the United States against whomever might be threatening us. When the United States became the United States, we were like a newborn animal out in the wild, extremely susceptible to predators. If another larger country wanted to try to attack us, how are we really going to defend ourselves? We didn't have a standing military. So people using the weapons they had in their homes is how that was going to happen. Now, see, under British control, the British didn't want to allow the colonists to be able to have weapons because they were afraid they were going to use those weapons to try to overthrow uh, Britain, which they did. And so the colonists said, if we want to protect ourselves, we've got to be able to own and keep our own guns. And so that's why the Second Amendment is the right to bear arms, because it didn't do any good to have the five parts of the First Amendment if there's a good chance we're going to get defeated by another country out there. It wouldn't have to be a country from Europe. It could be a country from Asia. It could be a country from South America. It could be those crazy Canadians to the north. Anyone could try to, you know, uh, could try to attack us. So by allowing citizens to keep their own guns, that would hopefully keep that from happening. Today, people just go completely overboard with the whole right to bear arms and the NRA, and they're just, they're just crazies. I own a number of guns. I'm an avid hunter. I have several handguns, but I don't have one of these AR-15s that has a 15 or a 20 round clip in it because why do you need something like that? Honestly, the shotgun that I have in my gun cabinet is going to be just as effective as an AR-15. If you have to shoot 15 times to hit someone that's standing 10 feet in front of you, if you're that bad of a shot, you really should not be having a gun in your possession. And a handgun, the same thing. A handgun that has 6 or 7 rounds, because when someone invades another person's house, when someone breaks into another person's house and the owner confronts that person with a gun, normally if they shoot, that shot's going to take place within 5 to 10 feet. And so I'm sorry, but if you cannot hit a full-size person standing 5 feet away from you, then again, you shouldn't be possessing a gun. Now, it's gotten to the point though where now you can walk down the street and you can have a gun tucked into um, your waistband. You can have one in your coat pocket. You can have a holster on you underneath your coat, and it's all perfectly legal. Why? Because a lot of states, like Nebraska, allow for people to carry concealed weapons. And so, in order to do that in Nebraska, all you have to do is, let me find it. I'll find it somewhere here. All you have to do is go to this website right here. You can download this. You can fill it out. You can see it's a Nebraska concealed handgun permit. Fill it out with all this pertinent information. Answer these questions, and you got to be careful how you answer them. You just can't go through and say, "Oh yeah, I'll just go ahead and put yes on all of them or no on all of them," because some people are going to do that, and if you mess this up, there goes your opportunity to have something like this. So you can see there's a number of questions. You know, just got to take your time, because even if you once you get this filled out, that's still not all that you have to do, because next thing you have to do is you have to take a course. You have to take a course from a licensed trainer in carrying and using concealed weapons. And once that gets done, um, then uh, you would fill out this part, when and where, who the instructor was. Of course, the other thing is there's going to be a very thorough background check that's going to be done on you. And here's where you can just take all these permits to. And then, this is what you're going to need. You're going to have this finished form. You're going to have to proof of training, proof of vision, proof of ID, proof of citizenship, proof of address, a photograph. You're going to have fingerprints. You're going to have a signature. And then it's going to cost you $100. Now, this is not, once you have this permit, you're good to go and you never have to worry about it again. It does have to be renewed, and to be honest, I don't even know how often it has to be renewed. An application form which is not complete or eligible. Now that says five calendar days, but I'm not sure how often you have to renew it. But when you do it, it's going to cost you another $50. And there it just says, who are people, these are the people that can have one of these. You have to be 21 or older. You cannot be a fugitive from justice. No convictions in any court of a crime punishable by imprisonment of more than 1 year. You cannot be a person who's an unlawful user or addicted to a controlled substance. And so again, you can just on your own, you can go to this website. It's not that difficult. I just simply, Googled Nebraska concealed carry application, and I just clicked right here on the application, Nebraska State Patrol, and that pops up. Okay, the Third Amendment. The Third Amendment is an amendment you're not going to hear very much of, and that's because it doesn't even apply in today's society. But the Third Amendment dealt with what was called quartering of soldiers. See, what happened was that when the U.S. was a colony of Great Britain, they did not have military bases or anything like that. So what would happen is soldiers would walk up to your door, and they would knock on your door, and you would answer it, and they would hold up a piece of paper and that would say, "By order of the King of England, you must allow us to stay here." And you had to do that because you have to remember, it might have been your house, but the land your house was built on was actually land that was owned by the English. And so since the house is on it and they own the land, they basically felt they had control of your house. And so they were going to live with you, you're going to feed them. In today's society, that would never happen. So that's why the Third Amendment, the book doesn't even really mention it. The Fourth Amendment, protection from unreasonable search and seizure of private property. If the British felt that you were unlawfully possessing a firearm, which means back then you would have had the good old black powder musket where you had to put powder in the barrel, and then you had to put a patch in that, and then you would put the musket ball, and then you had to use a ramrod and ram it down the barrel, and then you would put a cap on the end, and then you would pull the hammer back and fire it, and that when that hammer would go forward, it would hit a little flint which would cause a spark, which would ignite the gunpowder, which would then cause the musket ball to be projected out of the end of the gun. Um, Not only could you not have a gun in your possession, you could not have the musket balls, you could not have the gunpowder. And if mainly it was the military back then felt that you had this, they could come to your home and they could walk right in the front door and they could tear your home up looking for whatever, for what they felt you had. And if they didn't find it, then they would just leave. And the mess that they made, well, that was for you to clean up. Next, the Fifth Amendment. The Fifth Amendment is right to a fair trial, and it's also due process of law and the right to own property. Odds were that if you were arrested back during the colonial days, you're not going to get a fair trial. The way that you're going to be processed, how everything's going to go, it's not going to be done properly. And like I said, the land that you had, it was actually the England's land since this was an English colony, and so you really there was no such thing as private property. Some other parts of the Fifth Amendment, and you need to make sure you write this down in your notes, just as if I was putting this on the board. Now, other parts of the Fifth Amendment. One is what is called double jeopardy. What this means is that you cannot be charged with the same crime twice. So, what exactly does that mean? Okay, remember the example that I gave you yesterday when I said that there were two people and one of them, they went and interviewed for a job and one person lied about the other and it cost that person their job. Well, lo and behold, the person who did not get the job, well, they go and they shoot and kill the person that lied. And so they have this big trial, but that person is found innocent. And so as they're walking out of the courthouse, they're asked, how does it feel to be found innocent of these crimes? And they say, it feels great. In fact, I feel so good now that I can say I'm glad I killed him. Well, guess what? Even though you just admitted it, you were just found innocent, so you cannot be charged for that crime again. See, back during the colonial days, if you went to trial for something, for a law that you were said to have violated, and for whatever reason there wasn't enough evidence, and then all of a sudden somehow there is evidence, they would simply just charge you with that crime again, and you would uh, you would have to stand trial again. Um, Something else that goes along with the Fifth Amendment, and I'm going to put that right here, is what is called self-incrimination. Which means you don't have to testify against yourself. You get called, you're the one on trial, you get called to the witness stand and you get asked questions. And you can just look at the judge and simply tell the judge, I exercise my Fifth Amendment rights, which means you don't have to answer the question. Now, of course, that makes you look guilty because if you didn't have anything to hide, you'd be answering the question. But you don't have to. That is a right that you have. The Sixth Amendment. Sixth Amendment is the right of the accused to have a lawyer. And not only do you get to have a lawyer, the Sixth Amendment also allows for a trial by jury.